All right. Saxon, thank you so much for joining me today. I know we're just talking a little bit about the joys and tribulations of having kids, but it's awesome to chat with you this Monday. And why don't we kick things off? Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your story?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Matt. My name is Saxon, and I am a partner at a venture capital fund called Florida Funders, which I will get into a little bit about Florida Funders, but a little bit about myself. I always grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. So since I can remember, I was trying to hustle, trying to make money, trying to do something to fund my lifestyle, even at a young age of 12. But yeah, I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family where on my mother's side of the family, both of my uncles are very successful technology entrepreneurs. My dad is a very successful stockbroker, financial advisor, so really ran his own business. And then his brother, my uncle, is the same. So I was really destined to always be in the business or finance world. And so when I was younger, I grew up in Pittsburgh. Started my first business when I was about 15 years old. And it's funny to say this, but this was the time where nobody really knew how to sell things on eBay. They were hearing about, oh, all these things are getting sold on eBay, but I don't know how to do it. And so my buddy and I started JHSB eBay, Jack Herman Saxon Baum eBay. And our goal was to go to the neighbors, to knock on their door and say, hey, do you have old things in your garage that you think are worth something that we could sell? So we would do that. We would take 10% of the sale. We would do all the work. And that was really kind of my first formal forte, if you can call that formal. My first formal forte into entrepreneurship and business. But really I was always working. I grew up working in restaurants, busboy, waiting tables, working in pizza shops. I always wanted financial independence. My father is very successful and he was always working, not in a bad way, but in a great way. And so I learned that from him. Just always wanted to work and always wanted my own financial independence. Fast forward to being 18, I go to school at Miami University in Ohio. And when I was a junior at Miami, my buddies and I, we would go to concerts and we would go to sporting events and we'd see people with their phones in the air. So this was 2011 at the time. We'd see people with phones in their air, but then after the event, we couldn't find any of the content. So we couldn't find the photos, we couldn't find the videos. There was no real central repository of all the information. What we built was we built one of the first video and photo based sharing platforms, cloud based sharing platforms that really ever existed. And so from give or take like 2012 until 2015, we had this consumer product that we would go to sporting events, we would go to venues, we would go to artists, we would go to private events like weddings and bar mitzvahs and whatever it might be, and we would get people to use this app called WeView, WeVue. And also, this was at the same time where your business model was get eyes on the product, and somebody's going to pay you either invest or they're going to pay you for ad dollars. So it's a completely free product, completely free B2C product. My cousin and I started it with help from my uncle, my father, and my other uncle, who are the first investors. And really, for the first 3 years, we had this consumer product. Well, fast forward, Snapchat and Instagram, they go on, they raise a few $100 million, and they come out with location-based posting and hashtags. So right there, we're like, well, shit. They just ate our lunch. They have a lot more money than us. We were in Tampa, Florida at the time, and they're in Silicon Valley. I'm like, but what do we do? So we tested a bunch of different verticals and we realized that at the same time, simultaneously, tech companies primarily were using corporate culture and using culture to recruit. So it was the beer pong, the beer keg at the office, the ping pong table, all these things that we were used to seeing, the WeWorks of the world. So the bigger companies were doing a good job of leveraging that culture, showing it off, but the younger companies weren't. So what we did was we created an app to sell to really kind of small and medium-sized tech companies to gather photos and videos from their employees, things like win notices when it came to sales, things like employee introductions, things like weddings that would happen with employees, conferences, all these things that were happening. We want to gather photos and videos, and then we built a recruiting engine so that they could show off their photos and videos on their website to recruit like-minded individuals. And that was what we did for another give or take about 3 years. And then we ended up selling that company in 2017, and that's how I ended up with Florida Funders.
Wow. Let's go back to that first business when you're in Pittsburgh selling things on eBay. How'd that business go, and what was it like convincing people to actually let you into their garage, let you sell these things, and yeah, like how did walk us through how the business actually performed.
So I would say a business business in this sense is a loose term because really it was just my best friend and I at the time going out and doing this. I wouldn't say we got much further than our own neighborhoods. So mostly everybody's things that we were selling were people that we knew. So the trust factor was already there. Hence why they would let us in their garage and they would let us sell their things. Probably the biggest customer that we had was my parents, and I don't think they even wanted us to sell all the things that we sold. So we had business. I mean, we did have business cards. It was great. I mean, it was a young two hustlers just trying to make some money, and it was still at the time where everybody was using the internet, but it wasn't the smartphone era. And there was a lot of technical help, I guess you could say, that people needed to do things like sell things on eBay. And eBay, even at the time, was, I'll never forget how hard it was to sell something on eBay. I mean, there was like the interface of eBay. Then you had the interface of PayPal, which, I mean, that was nearly impossible to use. Then you actually had to go and do all the logistics yourself. So you had to bring in either USPS, UPS, FedEx. I mean, it was somewhat connected. But you then had to pick, okay, who did you want to ship with? You had to do the cost analysis about which one made the most sense. And then you had to charge more on the back end for the shipping. So it wasn't a fully integrated price when you would sell something. You actually had to know on the front end to charge more because you had to pay on the back end for the shipping. And so sometimes you would also get kind of in trouble there because the shipping would be more than what you charged. You'd have to go back to the customer. So it was somewhat of an intricate system back then. But yeah, it was a hell of a lot of fun, and it definitely just put me on that path of wanting to be an entrepreneur.
Did your family encourage you to start your own company? I mean, you mentioned that yeah, your dad, uncles, like people were successful in this. Was that something that was always expected of you, or would they? Yeah.
It's interesting. I would say it wasn't expected, but my dad always used to say, whatever you want to do when you're, this was when I was, pretty young, whatever you want to do when you're older, you can do. And not only can you do on your own, but I know people and here and here and here. And if you want to be a music agent, we'll introduce you to this person. If you want to be in the movies, we'll introduce you to that person. Whether or not that actually could become the case is, that was yet to be seen. But what was the truth and what has always resonated with me was my dad and my mom always said, if you put your mind to something, you can do it. And so my dad, as I mentioned, is and was very successful. But my dad was in the financial world and in public financial world. And so he had a lot of stress with work because he was always managing people's entire lives. I mean, he was managing people's net worth. He was managing all of their money. And then on the other side, on my mom's side, I would see both my uncles, specifically one of them, who were technology entrepreneurs. And I saw them and I go, these guys are having so much fun with what they're doing. I didn't know at that time that they were, killing it from a monetary standpoint. I just knew, like, I want to do that. Like, that looks awesome. I want to run a company. I want to be in technology. And so I always knew I wanted to be in business. It was always just it was our dinner table talk. I mean, my dad being a finance guy, like, that's what we would talk about. And so did I always know that I wanted to start my own business? Probably, yeah, I would think. I was also always getting in trouble. I mean, I was not somebody that was good at following the rules, which I think most entrepreneurs are not. And so I always knew I never really wanted to work for somebody else, and I wanted to do my own thing.
What about the volatility inherent in running a business? You mentioned that your dad was stressed, obviously working in finance, there's always ups and downs. Like how did you see that side of it as well beyond like the overall success? Like there were times when things did not go as well.
Yeah, I did. I did see both sides and I lived through both sides, and the wins outpaced the losses. And I just looked at my dad, who once again has done well and did very well. Although he was working, he was always, in the office on Sunday. He was putting in his time. We were not a family that was eating dinner at 5:30. We were eating dinner at 7:30, right? I always saw him at every single one of my games. He was always coaching. He was always at practices. And I knew that because he worked for himself, he was able to be there for his family. Yes, he worked a lot, but he had the flexibility. So if we had a baseball game, he would be there coaching. We go out for ice cream after, and then he would be working after. But he was always there. And so I saw other friends of mine whose parents were not there, and I think I learned pretty early on that they were not there because they were, their dads were traveling for work or they were working. And I knew I wanted to have that flexibility. Like I knew I wanted to be like my dad. And so yeah, there was a lot of volatility and there were ups and downs, but the good always outweighed the bad. And as I mentioned, have always been a risk taker and inherently still am. And so the volatility doesn't bother me. I would be so bored if I sat in an office from 9 to 5 doing some minute task. Like, I can't even sit on the couch for 20 minutes, let alone do that. So yeah, I thrive. I live for that. I mean, it's something that I truly enjoy.
Were there any specific, I don't know, tactics that you learned about dealing with this volatility, or like how to actually enjoy it and not let it like run your life?
It was just you just always grind. So it was a nonstop grind mentality, and it always has been with myself and my family. And when things get tough, you work harder, and when things get tougher, you work harder. Everything comes around. If you're taking L's, you're taking L's. You're getting punched in the face. You're getting punched in the face. If you are working hard and you grind through that, doesn't matter what it is. I can't predict the future, but I can pretty much guarantee you the good will happen. And that was always the mindset. Like that was always the mindset, was just grind through it. You gotta work hard. You gotta work hard. You gotta work hard. And if you work hard, everything else kind of falls in place. And you gotta focus. You can't take your eye off the ball. And so I think that the combination of hard work and focus was something that resonated with me early on because of my surroundings growing up. And it was never an option. I mean, that's just what it was. That's the type of people we are. We're from Pittsburgh. We're not from New York. We're not from Los Angeles. We're not from Miami. It's a blue collar town where my grandparents grew up with nothing and built an amazing life for their family. And the second generation, my dad and uncles, they did the same thing. And so it wasn't like I was going to do anything else. I mean, it was just, and I think if you ask my brother, you ask my cousins, I mean, if you ask my sister, if you ask anybody, you'd get the same answer. Like was there a choice? Maybe. Was anybody going to make another choice? No, not at all. We're just hardworking people. That's how we've always been, and it's truly in our blood.
And it sounds like you guys are also very close with each other. I mean, you started a business with your cousin, you're getting advice from your uncles. What was that like to have such family support? Were there pros and cons to that?
Yeah, it's interesting. And by the way, now for the last 10 years, I have run Florida Funders with my uncle, and so yes, we have an extremely close family. Both my immediate family of the five of us, but then our aunts and uncles and cousins, and it's such a blessing. And I pray every night of how lucky I am because of it. And so yeah, the support was always there, and so it's an absolute positive, no doubt. But one thing is, and my cousin and I, who ran our business together, we do talk about this. And this is something we put on ourselves. It's not like anybody put this on us, but we have pressure to perform. I mean, we have pressure to be as, if not more successful than our parents because they grew up with nothing and look what they did. And we grew up, lucky. And so this is not like them putting anything on us. This is just we've put it on ourselves that, we're gonna be super successful and there's no other question. So the support that, not only the emotional support, but the financial support that we've been given. I mean, my cousin and I started our business, our first year investors were my uncles. So his dad, my uncle that I run my business with now, and then my dad. I mean, those were the first checks in the business. And, to be able to say that and to be able to just have that support throughout your life, no matter whether it was in sports, whether it was in school, and then business, and now family. I mean, I guess the support that I have from my parents now with me and my kids. I mean, it's something that, once again, every night I go to bed and I thank God for, because I could not be luckier.
You said that you're a pretty active investor. You get involved with your portfolio companies. Was your dad and uncles, were they equally active when they made investments in you guys, or did they just leave you guys alone?
That's a good question. No, they were pretty active and they still are. I mean, they're all hands-on entrepreneurs. And so I'd say my dad, out of all of them, is less of he's not a tech entrepreneur, but he's a finance guy. But being in his world, he might hang his shingle somewhere, but it's still like running your own business. And so I would say my dad is knows less about just the world, the technology investment world from like a operation standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint and from a business building standpoint, my dad has always been there to be such a big help. My uncle that I run my business with now, I mean, we've done everything together in my whole career. So yeah, I mean, he is as hands on as it gets. And then my other uncle, my cousin's father, he has since retired in the last 5 or 6 years and has become more hands off. But when we were running our business and he was an investor, he was very hands on, and he's still to this day. I mean, some of the biggest LPs and investors that we have at the fund came from connections and referrals from my uncle. And so yeah, they're definitely hands-on because they love it. I mean, they're all entrepreneurs, and two out of the three are still working actively. But yeah, they're super hands-on, which is great. I mean, there's times that I've wanted to kill them, but most of the time. And it's probably because they're right and I don't want to admit it, which I used to have some trouble with. Now not as much. But yeah, they're very hands-on.
I think that because you mentioned you guys are very close, and the reality, right? Like with, especially with family, is that it's not always pretty. And to be that close, it requires a lot of active work. And I can imagine, especially on the business side, that's what you'd want, that level of like mentorship, and you want them to come in and tell you like, no, do this, do that, or why are you doing this? And so it's always fascinating, right? Because it's not like you're achieving this. You just got some passive investment and went on. If you're taking like family money, there are all these additional responsibilities that you have, but then they're also, if done well, they can lead to like phenomenal success in these families, like enduring and staying really close. So I'm always interested in what else you can learn from these more, I don't know, these other more difficult times where people are telling you to do something you might not want to learn, you might not agree with them, and yet you still have to find a way to work together, and you come out of that hopefully stronger than before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the tough times in business with family build both the business relationship and the personal relationship, which is special. I think we I've never really been in a situation where I thought I was jeopardizing any sort of personal relationship or family relationship due to business. My cousin and I used to fight like cats and dogs, and he's my best friend to this day. We don't work together anymore, but we did for years. And so yeah, I think it's challenging, but when done the right way, it's just so rewarding as well.
Tell me more about the relationship with your cousin, especially as a business partner. How did you guys get through some of these arguments and to continue working together?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, we not only were we working together, we were living together. And so we were together 24/7. I mean, I remember it would be Saturday, Sunday, and we would just be always talking business. I mean, there was never an off switch. And that definitely took a toll on us, I would say. That was challenging. Like just having everything commingled. And we were young. I mean, I was 22, he was 24, and we did that for about 6 years, give or take. There was a lot of challenges that we had. We had very separate roles at the company in terms of what we focused on. And so I think that that helped because neither of us really got in each other's way. With that being said, like we were really young and we were inexperienced. And so we learned so much from each other, and we would get so heated, like, I'll never forget, we'd be yelling at each other and in front of other employees. I mean, we had 5 or so employees at the time, and people think we were gonna kill each other. And then, 5 minutes later, we take a step back. All right, we're okay. And I think it's probably because we did that when we were younger, over because we were always competitive, and then we would always come back together. And so there was never a point where it was gonna be like, F you, we're never talking again. It was always like F you, take 10 minutes. All right, we're good. We're back. So yeah, we always kind of worked through it, I would say. But we were definitely masters of our own domain. He was product, he was operations, I was sales and marketing. And we didn't really get in each other's way in that sense. We did argue a lot over strategy. Um, and that's honestly why we decided to sell the business. I mean, we probably could have gone out and raised more money, but we were done. I mean, we were ready to move on to our next thing. We were ready for the next chapter. And actually, about 3 years into me on the venture side, he came in and ran marketing for us for about a year, which was great.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So I'm curious, like your how you started thinking about your businesses, and you saw your dad being on the finance side, and then you saw your uncles doing tech. And it's fascinating to me how kids, how we learn from mentors, not just our parents. There comes a point where it's like everything that mom and dad are doing is not cool, and you see someone else doing something or giving you advice that, oh yeah, that's the cool uncle, I want to do that. And no matter what level like that, this thing happens. And so like I'm curious what it was about the technology side that you saw your uncles doing that really attracted you. And also if you can talk about that role as like uncle, as mentor, aside from your parents, and how they made their job much more appealing than your dad made his job.
Well, I think the first thing is when you see somebody do something every day and you're living it, like my dad, it's just you're so much closer to that situation. So it's much different to say like I want to be in or I want to be out. You know, when you're on the outskirts of something, it's easy to say, "Hey, that looks great," right? When you're really in it, what do you really know? So my uncle, he was, just use my uncle that I work with now for an example. He was living in Florida. I was in Pittsburgh. He had always been running his businesses. But it's not like I saw him on a day to day to like see how he was interacting with employees and the challenges that he had. I just knew him as, hey, this is my uncle that's super successful, and he has run these tech companies, and you would never know because he's the most modest person in the world. But like he's a cool dude. Whatever he's doing, I want to do. Like that's really cool. My dad, I was always I guess the word would be hesitant to even be extremely intrigued into what my dad did because I knew it just wasn't for me. Like the first thing is I'm not a numbers person. So like going into a finance world back then to me was scary. And I loved technology. I always been like a tinkerer, like, hey, let's work on this, let's do this. And so the technology side was kind of where I knew I was going to be. I was early user of an iPod. I was early user of a computer. I was always gaming. Like I was always doing things on the computer or playing video games. Like I always enjoyed that. And then furthermore, when I had the idea for my business, my uncle was the first person I reached out to because I knew he was actively investing. And this is at a time where VCs and angels, like it wasn't this hyped up, sexy thing it is now. It was a dark black box of fundraising. But I knew he was an investor in technology companies outside of his own company. So he's the first conversation I had when I decided to start the company and I put together the business plan. He invited me on a trip to go to Scotland for my cousin's graduation. And that was when I first pitched him on the idea. And he's like, okay, this is interesting. When we get home, put some together and send it to me. And that was the summer I was going into my junior year of college. So that was the summer of 2012. Yeah, the summer of 2012. And no, I'm sorry, the summer of 2011 is when we started it. And yeah, it was just the first conversation. I knew it was going to be good timing, and we were going together, and it was like our trip to do. And yeah, I pitched him on. He's like, "No, this is really cool. I like this. Like, let's talk more about this. Put together something, and let's talk about it." Um, but I do think there's something to be said for when you see somebody that's close to you but not right there, and you see the success and you see them a few times a year and they tell you these stories, and your parents are always talking about, oh, what he's doing is really cool, and this is the business that he built, and so on and so forth. It's just there's something attractive about that. There's something magnetic about that, and so yeah, I also always knew, and I still to this day, like I knew I wanted to run a big company for whatever reason, not like an enterprise Fortune 100 company, but I knew I wanted to have international business and to be able to travel and have employees and work with people and build a team and build a family. And I always knew I wanted those things because I was always a leader. And so it sort of just came together that way, I would say. I was never going to go into something that was boring. I'll tell you that much. I was never going to go and start an insurance company. I was never going to go and start a brick and mortar store. Like that just, I had no interest in doing that. I had bigger aspirations than just like a local business. And so when apps and the iPhone and technology became such a big part of our lives, I had a calling there. And I also always enjoyed video work, like editing videos and making video, like picture collages and videos, whether it's for like a sports tournament or graduation or something like that. Like I was always big into iMovie. And so the visual application of the iPhone and apps and all of that was just something that was something I was really like, okay, this is my wheelhouse. This is really cool. Like I want to do something like this.
The point that you just made about always wanting to run a big international company to have employees to travel, I think it's really interesting. I mean, you hear these stories about certain founders that are always they have a vision and they're like, I want to build this thing, like the world would be better if this thing existed. But I feel like there's another group, or maybe it's even the same group, but where just the act of building a company is fun. Right, I don't care what I'm doing, but I want to run like an awesome like multinational company. I get to go to my different offices and do all these things, and I feel like, yeah, like it's less emphasized. It's less sexy. It's like, oh no, I've always had a vision. Ever since I was a kid, I was going to solve this problem. But it's like, no, I just actually like business is cool, and it's actually kind of fun to try to figure this thing out and to run on that kind of a scale.
That was always me. Like I never thought I was gonna save the world by cleaning the oceans. I never thought that, I was gonna create EVs. Like I never, and I still have no desire to do anything. I mean, obviously everything I do, I want to better society, but I don't have any desire to try to change the world from like that standpoint. I want to make the world better, of course, but that's just inherently what happens when you do something great. I always wanted to have something great though. I always did. The thing about me is I will tell you, I've never been the smartest. I've never been the fastest. I've always been a person that loves people and a really hard worker. And when I realized that those two things, along with vision and strategy, are really the qualities of a CEO, I kind of always knew I wanted to be the guy. And there was a few light bulbs that changed for me. Like when I went to college, I was a leader in my fraternity. I know it sounds funny, but those days of even being a social chair or in my freshman, the first, when I was a freshman, I was like the help with being the head of the pledge class, not the number one person, but the number two person with my buddy Mikey, who I still talk to this day on the regular. And then I was a house manager. Like I always wanted the roles and responsibilities. And then I was a social chair for 2 years. And it's funny I say this, but so much that I learned being the social chair of this fraternity still applies to what I do today. And yeah, I always knew I wanted to be the guy. Like I always knew I wanted to be the leader. I always knew people would follow me. And I always took responsibility when I fucked up. And I think that that's something that a lot of leaders might not do. But I will tell you, like, if you take responsibility when you mess something up, um, people are going to follow you because they know that it's okay to make mistakes. They know it's okay to take risks. They know inherently if something does happen, hey, it's a mistake. It's on me. Let's move on. Let's do something better. And so, yeah, I would say I always knew I wanted to be in the seat.
And you mentioned that you work hard, but you also love people. You talked about your leadership and starting off in college and earlier. What does loving people mean to you, and how does that get manifested?
Like I'm the type of person, and I really was when I was younger. I mean, I guess I'm a little bit more reserved now, but if I'm in an elevator, I'm talking to every single person in that elevator. If I'm on a trip with people I don't know, I'm talking to every person on that bus or on that plane. I've always been somebody that loves conversation, that loves to meet new people, that loves to ask questions. I mean, that's what I do. I'm a curious person. I will ask questions about everything. I've always been even a little bit we use the word nebby, but nosy, like always, even like in people's business, like, oh, why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? Always trying to just like ask questions to learn. And I've always been somebody that's extremely observant, like street smart wise, but then I ask the questions. And so that has helped me a lot in my career. Uh, and one thing, once again, I attribute this to my dad. Although we grew up in a family that never had to worry about anything. I mean, we weren't flying private jets everywhere we go, but we grew up in a very good family. We would see the other side of life. We would do things like every holiday season, we would be out donating and we would be going to give underprivileged kids, going to their houses and giving them their gifts. We would always, and my parents always exposed me like, hey, you're growing up this way, but there's a whole nother way of life. And I think that that really allowed me to connect with people. I mean, I'm somebody that I could go and talk to Jamie Dimon, or I can go and talk to the local janitor. Like, it doesn't matter to me. And I had a hockey coach when I was younger. There's just so many stories as you kind of talk about this. I had a hockey coach when I was younger that always used to say that doesn't matter if it's the janitor or the principal. Teach you, you treat everybody exactly the same. And just those things. I mean, my grandparents, as I said, grew up with nothing. My grandfather was a lineman with Duquesne Light, which is, was the local utility company. And my like they were frugal and they were Pittsburghers down to the heart. And that's just who we are. I mean, we're just, salt of the earth type people. And I was always raised that way. It was never like you're too good for anything, you have too much money for that. That's just bullshit. It's just not who we are. And I think that there's a lot about Pittsburgh in there too. Like if I think about the consistent themes of my life, I think growing up in Pittsburgh is there's a lot of successful people that come from Pittsburgh, and I believe it's because it's such a tight community with the sports and the people, and you're just very proud to be from that city. And I'm so proud to be from that city. And I think that that's another thing that always kind of, it's just like that feeling, that blue collar city. Like, no, I'm from Pittsburgh. Like, we work our ass off, we make it happen.
What? That's a really great point. A lot of people would, first of all, not talk to anyone in the elevator, but then even if you were to be next to Jamie Dimon or to a janitor, you might not know what to say. And I think to your point about curiosity, like you have to have, it sounds like, have to have something in common with people, or at the very least, a curiosity of just saying like, hey, this is like, I'm curious about what it is that you do, your life story. What are some of the things that you found, I don't know, like opening liners when you're trying to strike up a conversation with someone, or how do you go into a room and are able to talk to different people there and make it come off seamless?
So it's funny. I talked to my sister about this a lot because she was just asking me about this. She's like, how do you always kind of know what to talk about? And it's not like I have no idea what to talk about. I try to make connections to people depending on what they say. Oh, start a conversation. Hey, how are you doing? Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Charleston. Oh, no way. That's so cool. My sister went to Charleston. I spent so much time there. This, and this place. Awesome. Oh, yeah. The other thing about Charleston is teal. Like, I love to golf. Have you ever been there? And sort of just this connection point that you pick up on these little nuggets in conversation, because you always want to relate to people. Like, if you can relate to people, they immediately have a sense of trust, and there's an immediate sense of, okay, I get it, like I can have a conversation with this person. The other thing, and my dad always says this, you got to be authentic. There's so much BS out in the world. If you're not authentic, comes off that way. And so one thing for me is, I never, what you see is what you get. There's nothing else. If there's nothing else here, there's nothing deeper that I'm looking to achieve. That's just not who I am. I mean, it's just, you got to be authentic. It's like when you're in a conversation. This is a good one. You're in a conversation and you're at a function where there's other people that want to talk to you, and everybody's been in this situation. You're in the middle of a conversation. You're looking each other dead in the eyes. There's three other people circling around because they want to talk to you or they want to talk to the other person. The second that you break that conversation just by looking at the other person, you immediately tell that person that you're talking to that they're not the most important person in the room. And that right there, that's a flaw. Because you should make every single person in the room, when they're talking to you, they should feel like there's nobody else in the room, and you should make them feel that way. Not in a way where you're hovering over them and aggressively doing something, but in a way that is just so authentic. And that's a huge thing. Like, you just got to be present. You got to be authentic, transparent, visibility, all these things that we talk about. But when it comes to conversation, I always try to find ways that I can relate to the individual. And it's very rare that you find somebody that you cannot relate to in a sense of the matter. I mean, I'm talking relate like, oh, your name starts with S, my name starts with S. How funny is that? I mean, just small little things, but that's how and then you just build on those conversations. And, some of them are great and they keep going. And some of them are, hey, this is a good conversation, but not too much else to talk about. But just the curiosity. I mean, like when you go to a restaurant and you look at the back of a plate to see who makes the plate, you're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Like, who makes this? Oh, where's this from? Oh, that's interesting. Like, is there a reason why these plates are from Denmark? Do you think the owner of the restaurant is from Copenhagen? Oh, that's interesting. I should maybe ask him that when he comes over here because I noticed the plates are from Denmark. Just things like that. I mean, there's like small little things, but that's just a part of who I am.
The point you're making about being at a conference and you shouldn't be breaking eye contact. What I've noticed is that part of that is people are insecure to just cut off a conversation, and you start doing that as an excuse to give the other person a hint that, hey, I'm kind of done with this, versus to like what you said or what your dad was saying, to be authentic and just say, hey, listen, I got to talk to someone else, or I got to go keep networking. It was really nice talking to you. And then that allows you to focus and be in the moment with the person in front of you, but also doesn't mean you have to be there the whole day just talking to this one guy. Yeah.
I mean, it's something like when I had the younger people that work for me, they're at, we'll go to a trade show and they're at a booth. And they're like, just got sucked into this like hour-long conversation. Like your job is to literally cut off that conversation when you guys are done. Like you're not gonna make anybody feel bad. Be transparent. Hey, it was great meeting you. Let's make sure to follow up after, and maybe there's something there. Boom. Easy. If you're spending an hour at a conference talking to one person and you're only there for 3 hours, that's not a great use of your time. I can pretty much guarantee that. And so, yeah, you always have to know in a nice way, to your point, in a nice way, how to move on, how to break the conversation, and how to move on to the next thing.
I want to go back to a point you made earlier about your parents referencing what your uncles were doing as something cool and interesting. It's kind of funny how, just looking back at my life, certain moments had such a disproportionately big impact on me, but to the person saying it, they probably don't even remember that they said it. And I'm sure your
Totally.
parents just made some comment about like your uncle doing this or that. And just like they would make tons of comments about all sorts of people. It's like certain things stick. And I also think that it's interesting to have parents are preaching something to you, okay, like do this, and like constantly yelling at you to do something, versus when you watch them admire somebody else and they don't even need to say much. It's just like, oh, that was in like that was really cool. And now all of a sudden, like, wait a minute, I'm gonna pay attention to the thing that really got my parents' attention, not the thing that they've been yelling at me to do. And I don't know, I'm kind of curious if any of that like resonates with you, and like how that actually like happened in your childhood.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's like Ricky Bobby, like if you're not first, you're last. His dad's like, I don't remember saying that. And that's what the guy lived his life on, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, there's these little points throughout life where you hear things and it's somebody might have said it 100 times and they don't think anything of it. I had this basketball coach one time that was like, I don't give a shit if you're blue, purple, yellow, black, white. When you're in this gym, you're all the same. And you're all here to make it happen and you're all here to work hard. You know how many times this guy probably said this? He has no fucking idea who I am. And I still think about this as it was 30 years ago, 25 years ago. And so, yeah, there's so many little things that uh, people say. And now I see it with my daughter, and I'm sure you too. Like, you got to be careful what you say because, like, they pick up on everything. And we're talking about a 2-year-old here. I can only imagine, like, she's, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Really growing up. And you just have to, you have those moments in life, like the light bulb goes off for whatever reason, and you can't predict them. You don't know when they're going to happen. But there's those pivotal points where it might mean nothing to the person that said it, but to you, it changes the trajectory of your life.
So let's turn to that, some of those pivotal moments in your career. You were at the end of college and you started your tech company, the thing that you've been thinking about or had seen emulated before. And you're early, right? With the whole video,
Super
the
early.
Instagram, Snapchat,
Totally.
that whole thing. What was that like? Like, I mean, clearly you saw that this was something. Did you ever envision like how big of a thing it was going to be?
I don't think I ever. So first off, our business never got to be this huge business that we wanted, right? We were moderately successful for a little bit. We ended up selling the company. I didn't make any money. My cousin didn't make any money. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a total failure, but it was not a success by any means. So I want to be clear about that. So just to be clear, this was not like we created Uber and you never heard of me because I did it in Tampa, Florida. Like this was not a very successful company. It was an amazing journey and we learned so much. And I attribute my current success, a lot of it to that. But I could have never predicted, I don't think anybody could have predicted the rise of individualism in social media. There's a few things a few windows in my career that I look back and I'm like, okay, I could have gone this way and it would have changed everything. And I'm either happy or I didn't, happy that I did or I did not do that. The first thing is when I was 14, I went to prep school to play hockey. So I went to school in Pittsburgh called Shadyside Academy. That was from what I can remember one of the first major decisions. pivotal decisions in my life because not only did I get a much better education, in my opinion, but I also met now who are my best friends. And so that was kind of one of the first turning points for me. The second was going to college at Miami University. So I was going to go to Colorado Boulder. My parents were basically begging me not to go. I went to visit Miami University outside of Cincinnati in Ohio, and on my way back, I called my dad. My mom and I went. I called my dad and said, cancel the tour to Colorado. Like, I'm going to Miami. And that was another kind of pivotal decision for me in my life. When looking at these like pivotal points in terms of technology, I definitely missed out on a few of these opportunities. The first thing is when I was in college, I was at the I would say not the epicenter, but because I wasn't in Los Angeles or New York, but like on the outskirts of the epicenter of what I would consider the rise of influencers. So it was pre like major influencer, but I was selling spring break trips. I was booking music. I was bringing in DJs to Miami of Ohio. I was working with groups like Barstool and I'm Schmacked, and I could have very easily gone and figured out how to get more into that world of influencers and social media and music and touring, and I didn't. And I'm happy I didn't. But that was one opportunity where I look at it, I was like, I could have gone that way because I was very early with a lot of that, very early. Like nobody was listening to electronic music when myself and my best friend, who's now one of a very large electronic music agent, were booking these shows. I mean, people didn't know anything about electronic music, and we were pretty early on. So I look at that like I could have found an artist and been a manager. I could have gone and been a an agent. I could have gone that music route, and I didn't. So that was one thing. I don't
But
regret that at all.
why do you think you didn't end up going down that route?
So there was a pivotal point. It was in between my junior and senior year of college when we were starting the company where I could have gone to work for an agency out of Nashville on the music side, or I also got an internship opportunity to go to New York and to work for VH1, MTV, Viacom. And I made the decision to go to New York and work at Viacom because I wanted to be in New York City. And I felt as though the path of going there compared to just working in music would give me a better resume to be able to do whatever I wanted in my career. And I decided to make that move. And that move, because if I would have gone the other way, I can pretty much guarantee I would still be working in music. That was really the door that opened up for me to be in the tech world because I was doing a lot of analytical work for VH1 and MTV, more around advertising, but it was more technical work and I really enjoyed it. And so that was a major pivotal point for me. I look back at like some missed opportunities. Like I was, as you can imagine, being in technology, starting our company in 2011. Crypto is something where I kick myself because I have people around me that have made hundreds of millions of dollars, and I never really invested in crypto. Like I remember when my cousin and I were running our business, we were at an accelerator in Tampa. There was a guy that was working next to us doing Bitcoin mining, and he was explaining it to us, and he's like, "Yeah, it's at $15." I was like, all right, how do we get in? And he's like, well, you need to do this and this and this and this. And I was like, oh, that's way too complicated. Like, I don't know, I'm out. That was a missed opportunity because even if it was small dollars, like we could have made a killing. Like we were around it. My friend Zaid and I, who's the CEO of a very successful portfolio of company of ours called Flex, we always talk about, we're like, well, shit, we got all these people that have made hundreds of millions around us, and all that we needed to do was like put some money in crypto early on. Why didn't we do it? He's like, because we're somewhat sophisticated when it comes to technology and business. And at that time, that was not the right decision to make. Looking back, hindsight's 2020. But that, some of these things like that, I look at, I'm like, well, I was all over this. Like I could have made millions and millions of dollars just like even investing in it. So there's just a few things here or there. One thing that I would say I have been all over very early on is artificial intelligence. So not only have I invested, have we as a fund invested a lot in artificial intelligence way before this Gen AI boom, but me personally as well, like in the public markets, I've done a lot of AI investing and that's done very well for us. So that was something where I was in it. I was early and I knew that this was going to change the way that we live our lives. And so that's definitely been something that we were as a firm all over and then myself all over as well. But yeah, there's some of these pivotal points. I mean, another huge moment of my life is I met my wife when I was 18 years old, and I'll never forget. We had met at a party in college, and then the following week, and she was seeing this guy, right? The following week, I saw her studying outside of the cafeteria mess hall, and I went up and I started talking to her, and me just going to talk to her, maybe that day changed the trajectory of my life. Just like those little moments where you make a decision, left or right, left or right, left or right, and all those turns add up to get you somewhere.
What was it about investing in AI? What did you see when it came to AI that wasn't there for you when you're looking at the crypto investment? Like, how have you changed your mindset and your philosophy as an investor to spot this opportunity?
Yeah, and I talk about this all the time too. This is like on record. I talk about this. First off, if and I had just had lunch with somebody, if you're not using artificial intelligence in any part of your life, which I think would be nearly impossible at this point, you are wasting your own time. I mean, it is the application of AI on so many different levels is has changed the way the world operates, and it's just fascinating and it's amazing, and it's only going to become more and more. It's only going to become a more and more intelligent, but being more and more integrated in with our lives. This is the core differentiator between what I saw with artificial intelligence and what I saw with blockchain and Web3. I never saw a true application of blockchain and Web3 outside of trading and making money. And inherently, then, I never thought that big businesses were going to use and adopt this technology, which, by the way, they still really have not. When it comes to artificial intelligence and machine learning has been around for decades. It just wasn't around in a commercial use for the retail user or retail consumer. And so there has been a run up of 30 years of artificial intelligence and machine learning, really more machine learning, being used inside of businesses and inside of people's lives to be able to make decisions, predictive analytics, to be able to run things smoother. And so what we're in now, it's not like it happened overnight. This has been 40 years in the making. Where if you look at Web3, crypto, and blockchain, literally you're talking about maybe 20 years at this point, maybe more like 15. And there's still not mass application for Web3 and crypto. And I don't know when there will be. Now with stablecoins, you're starting to see, a little bit more of that on the treasury management side. But that was the core fundamental difference. I saw and I knew that the application of artificial intelligence was real, was making people more efficient, it was making people's businesses more effective. And that's the core fundamental difference between the wave of Web3 and blockchain and the current wave of artificial.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What so your the initial tech company that you started, WeView, you then is that the one that you pivoted to do more of that company culture recruiting
Yeah.
side okay.
Yeah, it was the same company. We just pivoted it, took technology in house for like 6 months, rebuilt it, and then tested verticals and realized, okay, corporate culture is on the rise. Companies are looking to retain and recruit the like-minded talent. Like, let's bring it into there.
What was that pivot from a consumer app to let's say a B2B company? What was that like for you to transition? It's a pretty big change in customer
It
base.
was a, it was it was a do or die. Like we were gonna fold up shop or we were gonna do something, and we had money in the bank, and so my cousin and I weren't ready to give up. So we were just testing verticals, testing verticals, testing verticals, and then my uncle, our business partner, was like, "Hey, you guys should try this inside of my company." He was running a really successful content creation, content like learning management software type company for compliance. And he was like, "You guys should try this. Like, bring this into my company. Let's see if it works." So the HR manager took the product before it was rebuilt and started playing around with this. And she's like, "Oh yeah, no, this could be cool." So then we use them as a design partner to build out our first instance, and that's really how we kind of got going. But we completely shut down the consumer product. Like we got rid of it, took it off the app store, which was painful, as you can imagine. Just even getting it on the app store in the first place. But yeah, we took it off, took everything in house, and 6 months later, Maria merged with two customers. One being my uncle's company. That was the design partner, and then the other one being another local business here in Florida. And then we just that was a pure focus. Because the thing about the consumer side is it was really hard to focus because the product was applicable to so many different verticals, and we never got product market fit, and so it was very hard to focus because it was like, okay, well, we'll do it for sports, but we'll do it for concerts, but we'll do it on college campuses. And it worked at all these places, but there was no core focus. and it was events was the focus. Well, that's not a very narrow focus. And so then once we had, I would say we got 75% of product market fit with the new product, it was at least we could focus on going to sell to these types of companies and these types of people. And so it just gave us a lot more focus after we did that. But the pivot was it was a do or die because we were going to fold up if we didn't figure it out. And then we raised a little bit more capital, and then that's when we ran that side for about 2 more years.
And then, okay, so what happened afterwards? So you said you sold the company in
Yeah, so
2017.
we did a license deal with a company here locally that wanted to use the software for higher education recruiting. So they wanted to give the software to students and faculty at colleges to gather photos and videos for prospective students. And so they were a marketing firm, and that's what they did. And so r- really right after that, I wanted to go back to New York because I was in New York for a little bit before I moved down to Florida. And I wanted to go and work for Facebook, Amazon, Google. I just wanted to go and work for a big tech company because I made no money at the startup for years, and my friends were starting to do pretty well, and I was just done being broke. And so I was like, I want to go and get a cushy job at a big time company. And so I was in the process of doing that, and that's when my uncle and his partner then, my partner now, approached me and said, "Hey, we're taking this thing over. We're going to build a venture fund, and we're going to need somebody on the business development side. We need somebody that can go out and raise money." And I'll never forget my current partner, Mark. We went to get a drink together, and he's like, "I think you'll do well. I think you'll do well, but I don't think that you're going to sell much. It's going to be hard for you. I can barely get my friends to put money. It's going to be really hard for you." Well, that first year, I did like 7 or 8 million, and I was like, "Well, I thought you said it was going to be like nearly impossible for me," and I still to this day we joke about it. But yeah, that's when I started in venture. And once again, going back to my background and me growing up, my dad was always in finance. I love investing. I love stocks. I love business. I love technology. I just ran a company for 7 years. I love everything that's going on in the tech world. What is the marriage of finance and technology in early stage companies? It's venture capital. And by the way, at this point, and not that there's a plethora of it now, but at this point, there was no venture capital in the state of Florida. We were like one of three funds in the state of Florida. So I was also like, oh, this is interesting. I can kind of make a name for myself as like the venture guy in Florida because there really isn't much. Well, fast forward a decade, now there's a lot more. But we've become and are the premier early stage venture capital fund in the state of Florida in the Southeast. And I'd be remiss to also not say I didn't want to continue to work for my uncle. My uncle is truly my best friend, and working with him it has been one of the biggest joys of my entire life. And so I also it was a great opportunity for me to continue to work with him. And he at this point hadn't yet come and taken over Florida Funders as the managing partner. Mark, who I just mentioned, was the managing partner at the time because my uncle still was getting out of his prior business. But then when he had his final exit, then he came on as the managing partner. So yeah, I mean it everything happens for a reason, right? You got to work hard, and you got to make it happen, but everything happens for a reason. And so, yeah, it started with a conversation, just like, hey, what are the pivotal points? Started with my uncle saying, hey, maybe you want to take a look at this. Fast forward almost a decade. And that's how we got here.
Tell me more about the actual VC fund. What do you guys see? What kind of companies you're looking at, and how's the? And I'm also curious the evolution of the startup ecosystem in Florida. You mentioned you're one of the first of only VC funds 8 years ago, but now, yeah, I would imagine things are different.
Things are very different. Let me start by saying we are not your typical venture capital fund. My uncle always says this venture is a bunch of lemmings, they all follow each other. We are not your typical VC. We will invest in things that are not in our thesis every now and then. We will invest in killer founders if something might be a little hairy. So we're not your typical VC. And we're not your typical VC also because of our business model. So we're a hybrid between a venture fund and an investor network. What that means is our funds are our core business, currently raising a new institutional fund. But we have an online platform. We call it our Florida Funders Investor Network. And there's about 3,000 accredited investors that have signed up over the years that have the ability to invest alongside of our fund. So the word SPV now is common knowledge. People talk about it all the time, sidecar, side deals. When we started this 8 years ago, we were literally the only people that I know that were doing a fund followed by an SPV. You don't have to invest in the fund. You can follow the fund in a vehicle that we put together. So we always say we're a hybrid between a venture capital fund and an investor network. And that's just a part of our DNA. And so that's the first major differentiator. The other thing is we're all former entrepreneurs. So not just myself, but my other four partners, we all came, except for one of them, came from building, running, and selling from scratch tech companies. And so we're not your typical Harvard, Stanford, Yale, MBA. I always like to say, we're blue collar guys from Pittsburgh, but we're all about entrepreneurs and we're all about founders because that's who we are at the core. We are founders ourselves and we're entrepreneurs. I mean, we built this firm from nothing up to give or take 300 million, not including our new fund. And so we're entrepreneurs. Now, what do we invest in? It's all early stage technology. So late pre-seed to early series B, primarily B2B, do a lot of SaaS work, fintech, AI, ML, cybersecurity, future of work, primary categories. Then we'll do ed tech, healthcare, no pharma, no FDA approval, but digital health. And then we'll invest in sports, sports gambling, and sports entertainment, and then content creation, content monetization. And so, but primarily all B2B. B2C, unless it's very much so differentiated, we do not invest in. We're started Florida only. So our first fund, about half the investments were Florida. Like our first 20 investments were all probably Florida or a nexus to the state. We dropped that, but about halfway through the fund, we dropped that because we realized we probably weren't going to be able to generate the returns that we wanted to be able to build an institutional fund if we only invested in Florida. It's nothing against the state. It's very hard to build a portfolio in a small microcosm and be very successful. Venture is hard enough in and of itself. And so we realized pretty early on, like we weren't going to get the quality of deal flow that we needed just in the state of Florida. Now, that was also in 2017 and 2018. If you compare 2017 and 2018 to what we see now, really post 2020 in the state of Florida, I mean, it's tenfold different. First off, we have a lot of the major players in terms of venture capital and private equity have set up shop in South Florida. The Andreessens of the world, the Sequoias, the Thoma Bravos, the Goldmans. I mean, they all now have offices in South Florida. And with capital came some amazing talents. And you look at just the bar of talent in the state of Florida from an entrepreneur standpoint, we're dealing with, tenfold higher level of quality, like sophistication and quality, everything is just that much higher. And it's been amazing. And I would say we have done a really good job to be able to take advantage of that because we were the real true organic player that was here first, and we were waving our Florida flag. You guys will see after this goes live, it'll be perfect. We're going through a rebrand right now, so it's going to come up tomorrow, actually. Still Florida Funders, but you're going to start to see FLF used a lot, which is really kind of the opening up of, and we've been doing this for years, but the opening up, hey, we're not just Florida, we invest all over, and we think that that'll help our story with larger institutional investors and companies outside of the state. But we have seen just a seismic shift in technology in the state of Florida and in the greater Southeast. Southeast is the fastest growing technology ecosystem. I think Florida is the leader of the Southeast. But you don't need to be in San Francisco. You don't need to be in New York anymore to build companies. You can be anywhere. And we've always said that. And now it's true. I mean, it's just so true. Now, still, I think it's 60% of all venture deals get done in the Valley. So it's hard to say that it's not the Mecca because it is. People always ask me, oh, do you guys want to be Silicon Valley? Like, no, not at all. We do not want to be Silicon Valley. We want to be Tampa. We want to be Miami. We want to be whatever it is. We're not trying to be somebody else that we're not. We're just trying to be a great ecosystem, and we're well on our way to doing that.
In terms of the investments themselves, you mentioned that you guys are looking at sports and content. I know, given your Pittsburgh roots, what are you seeing in sports? What's going on there from an investment perspective?
Well, I mean, there's just so many different areas. Like my expertise these days is sports betting because I work with a company out of Miami called Better BETR. The sports betting landscape is always changing and it's never the same. We see the domination of online sports books by the core players, but now you're seeing so much product innovation with things like pick'em products, things like sweepstakes and lottery products. The sports gambling integration in with sports is crazy. I mean, you can't turn on Sports Center or Around the Horn or whatever the show might be without seeing a line anymore. It used to be so taboo, you would never talk about it. Now the broadcasters are talking about, hey, they're favored by this. This is what the line is. ESPN has their own betting platform, ESPN Bet. They have betting shows. And just the integration with sports betting and sports it's like nothing I don't think anybody could have imagined because of how taboo it was for so long. So that's the first thing. The other thing, and we had one of my mentors and great friends, Roger Ehrenberg, the GP of eBird Capital, who's a very active sports investor. We had him on our podcast 2 weeks ago. And we were asking him a similar question, and what's the future? He's like, it's all about fan experience. It all comes down to the fan experience. Whether that's the fan at the game, whether that's a fan at home, whether that's a fan watching it on the phone, on the plane, it doesn't matter. It's all about fan experience. And that resonates big time because fan experience and engagement, personalization, that's not just sports, but that's everything. And now just the accessibility of individuals via technology has allowed the fan experience to become that much stronger. The other thing that is just very interesting right now is just the infiltration of private equity inside of major sports leagues. So you have valuations of sports teams that are just astronomical, and there's no individuals that can keep up with this anymore. So now you're seeing private equity come into sports ownerships and sports ownership groups, which has been very cool and very exciting. And just the value of sports in terms of teams has gone straight up. And then you have the individualization of players. I mean, you look at a player like LeBron James and what he has built around his own brand. That would be impossible if it wasn't for the rise of social media and technology. And he has an empire that he's built, and it's not just shoes and it's not just endorsements, but he's got his own VC fund and he's got his own agency. I mean, it's just amazing what has happened, and just the personalization and the personal identity of sports is something that it's not going away anytime soon. And just sports as a whole, I mean, we're in for an amazing next 10 years.
Pleasure. Say more about the fan experience and the personalization of that. What are some of the innovations you're seeing there? If you were to start a new sports league yourself, how would you design like, if you can do anything, how would you design like the most ideal fan experience for a sport?
Well, I mean, I've seen some things recently where it's like the fans pick the plays. Like there's a league out of Las Vegas now where fans can actually pick the play. So it's a crowd-sourced way of running a game, basically. And it's fascinating how they do it. You're at the game, integrated application. You say next play. It aggregates everybody in the stadium, and then it tells the quarterback what the next play is. And so things like that, I mean, it's just so cool, like literally fully injected into the game. I mean, running the game, truly running the game. I think that that's very interesting. I think one thing that I think is really interesting is how the individual person these days is so connected with their health and their well-being. And you think about connected devices like an Aura or a Whoop, and you think about longevity like a Function Health, and just the visibility into the longevity of your life and your health and the connectivity around that. That to me is fascinating. So I think like we're starting to see connective sports equipment. We're seeing helmets and we're seeing pads and these different parts of equipment where you can make like really data driven choices around different either gameplay and or Moneyball type decisions, like is this player really, are we getting really what we're paying for type thing? How can we change the lineup? We have a company called Gemini Sports in our portfolio. They do this for soccer or European football, where they can literally predict how that lineup is going to play together. And it's just fascinating to see. So I think the integration of data, which is coming from the connectivity of different sorts of devices, is super exciting. Then you have the fan experience. The fan experience as a whole, I thought for a while was broken because you had a lot of people saying, why would I go to the game when I can just watch it at home and it's just that much better? Those days are over because going to games now, you're starting to get integrated in with the game, and you have teams rewarding you for going to games. You have different sorts of point systems to become super fans. You have engagement from players at stadiums. I mean, the fan experience in a stadium has never been cooler. And then you just have the technology like the jumbotrons and what you're seeing now. I mean, we went to Dallas Cowboy Stadium for the Jake Paul Tyson fight. If you've never been to that stadium, you have to go. I mean, it's just amazing what they've built. And you're not going to get that. You know how many games I've watched at Dallas Cowboy Stadium on TV? Yeah, it's cool. But when you go there, same with Lambeau Field. Like it is so cool to go there, and they have this walk of fame, like integrated technology, AR type system where you like go through like the Packers Hall of Fame and you feel like you're a part of it. And so the integrated experience with technology actually at the game is fascinating. And then the in-home experience, obviously at this point is insane. I mean, what are we up to? 8K when watching these games. I mean, and then sports gambling, that the future of sports is very, very bright. I don't know this, so don't quote me, but I bet you if you look at the revenue coming from sports compared to any other type of entertainment, it's much higher at this point coming from sports.
I was just thinking about your point around this fan experience and feeling like you're calling the plays, you're actively participating in the sport, combined with the health and wearable space. Whenever I go to a game, there's some element in your head that it feels like you're also getting a workout, which is clearly not because you're just drinking and sitting on the sidelines and just watching these other people do these crazy like athletic things. But I was just thinking like I don't know, it's like it might be cool to like if Peloton ever did a collab with like I don't know like an NFL thing where the faster like you have these bikes in the stadium, the faster you ride your bikes, the more like energy your team gets, and they can somehow yeah like it gives them better shots of succeeding. This like that would be a pretty
Or they get like an automatic first down or something like that, right?
exactly, yeah. And like
Yeah,
there's some version
that's
that
cool.
would like make some noise and like yeah, that's gets people to like amped up. But like I feel like I don't know if there's some way to unlock and make you feel like your own like physicality is contributing to how your team is performing. Like people obviously go nuts and be like, fuck it, I'd ride this Peloton faster if it meant like helping my team get another first down. Like that'd be pretty sick.
That's it's really interesting. Hey, somebody's probably thinking about that somewhere. I mean, with these integrated leagues, I don't think that that happens on the big time. But the thing now is you're seeing alternative sport leagues. So you're seeing different football leagues, you're seeing different soccer leagues, you're seeing these leagues pop up where the core four leagues are still extremely dominant in the US, but you're seeing these secondary leagues really pop up. I mean, just look at golf and live. PGA and Live. I mean these secondary leagues and TGL, the golf league down in South Florida, where you hit into a simulator and then you're on this really cool like a hole, but you're just the hole. You don't have the whole course, and they have this cool stadium that they built around it. There's a lot of really interesting things happening on the sports side, and I do think, just to put a point on that, I do think the money that's coming in via private equity, it's only going to make it more and more interesting because there's just so many dollars floating around. The capital is there.
How do you guys think about, you mentioned content as well. How do you think about that side of the equation? And not just for sports, but more broadly. And you obviously, yeah, your company was involved
Yeah,
in that
exactly.
space
I mean,
early
I
on.
have like that whole background. Content is a very powerful tool. People always used to say content is king, like that sets you apart. It's challenging to say that now because of how easy it is to create content. Back when 10 years ago, if you were writing blogs and you were posting all over social, like it was very clear and obvious you were a thought leader, and you knew what you were talking about. Those days are somewhat gone because of AI, good and bad with everything. But I still believe content is truly king. It's just a different form of content. I mean, video content, type of stuff that we're doing right now in terms of podcasting is just so effective. There's only a few things that are really, I would say, sort of unique. And I think so there's deep fakes, but I think video content, like the purview into people's lives. We have a company that we've invested in called Passes, which is a safe for work OnlyFans competitor. And the types of content that these individuals are creating, it's just fascinating to see like a peek into somebody's life. And I think that there's a whole world around that, obviously, with reality TV brought onto your phone. Think about it, just it was probably just 15, 20 years that reality TV's even been around. Yeah, you still have the major shows, but reality TV lives right here now. I mean, it lives on Snap, it lives on Insta, it lives on TikTok. And so content, in my opinion, will always be king. It's just what is the form of distribution? What's the form of creation that stays unique? Because when everything is put together, it's not super exciting. When you still have unique content, that's when things are exciting.
Wait, did you say your investment is a safe for work OnlyFans competitor? What does that mean?
So there's no nudity. There's no nudity on the platform. Safe for work. Not safe for work. It's an acronym that means nudity and or like over 18 type material. This is a safe for work higher end platform that content creators can use to monetize their content.
Super interesting. I mean, yeah, like I've
Yeah.
been like the OnlyFans business model is it's so interesting. And there's a couple of Wall Street Journal articles about this and how they've been able to take all these what seemed like are cons to their business model and turn around the fact that they can't be in an app store. It's a great, because that means we don't have to pay 30% of our revenues to Apple, and we can give more to the creators. And even the fact that, yeah, like Instagram, all these major platforms will never copy them because they don't want to, like, they just can't do nudity, and they're using those social media platforms to funnel in traffic. Yeah, like how do you, maybe like the broader question around that. I was talking to some people that were hypothesizing that AI, and you have these rise of like virtual girlfriends and virtual whatever companions as a way to, yeah, to get people to become like more immersed and interactive with the content. How do you feel about AI's role in this more broadly?
I think that for the time being, it hasn't yet become an issue, but I do think that there's going to be a lot of noise for a while in terms of AI and in terms of like when you go on these sites, like how do you tell what's what, which I think will be regulated out. I think that AI, out of everything we've talked about today, content is probably the one of the biggest things that it changes. I mean, I was having a conversation last week with somebody where they were basically like, if you give me two of the podcasts that you've done, I essentially can build you a content strategy for a year and I will build all of it. Not only will I build more podcasts, but I'll build blogs. I'll build all of your social just based off of the way that you talk and what you talked about and two podcasts. And so how do you compete with everybody or anybody that's doing this? That to me is where things are going to get interesting. And I look at it like funneling to premium content is probably going to be the winner. You know, you look at sites like Medium where you have to pay to read somebody's content. It's probably going to be, hey, you know, this is non AI generated, and there's going to be like a de facto standard that you have to run content through to prove that it's not AI generated. We're just in the wild, wild west of content creation with AI right now. It's not going to slow down, but just like anything, there'll be guardrails that are put in place, and then the best content creators will still be able to monetize that. So yeah, that's what I would say around.
Yeah, that's gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be real interesting to see how this stuff plays out. And bring us back to your fund. You said you're in the middle of a fundraise right now for a new fund. Like, what's the latest?
Yeah. So we're in the middle of a fundraiser right now, raising our fourth vehicle, but it's our third core fund. So it's FLF Fund 3. We are raising, give or take, about 100 million, and we've already invested in 7 companies, about to be 8. Out of those 7, 4 are pure AI companies. One focused on Gen AI, but the rest are I would say utilities inside of artificial intelligence, more like fundamental picks and shovels, foundation layer type things. So far, it's been a really good investing period. I mean, we have seen better deals, I would say, in the last year than we saw in the last decade. That's not just deal flow, but I'm sorry, that's not just the actual businesses, but that's the deals as well. I mean, valuations have come down. The pendulum has swung much more towards investor than founder, and we're happy with that because for a while it was really much so founder, really good founder economics, and now we've got pretty good investor economics. So that's great to see. Um, and overall, you know, our fund is really focused on going in early with experienced founders that can sell. They can sell their product, they can sell investors, and they can sell others to come and join their team. And then we live for growth. We like to see 3 to 4x year-over-year growth as pre-seed and seed. Once you get to, you know, late seed A, we like to see at least 2 to 3. And then, you know, you can flatten out a little bit, but we are our growth really over anything. It's founders, those 3 things have to match up, and then the growth piece as well.
Amazing. And how can people get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more? You know, LinkedIn,
Yeah,
where's the best
absolutely.
place?
Founders and investors, find me. I'm best via email, so just Saxon@floridafunders.com.
Awesome. Well, Saxon, it was so great to have you on, and it's been awesome to hear about your journey on as both an entrepreneur and now being on the investor side of things. Thank you so much for
It's been
joining me.
amazing. It's been amazing. I appreciate it. If anybody wants to find me, they know how.
Awesome.